What's next for IT? In today's economy, technology touches every aspect of the day-to-day operations of business. There has never been more pressure on IT to deliver for our organizations. So what can we expect over the next decade? We need to think differently about how we approach our work to continue to thrive into the future. This requires all of us to be intentional in how we look at our role going forward. Smart IT is an approach to getting the important things done by transforming the way we think, work, and lead. And now, let's disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk the smart IT way. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. And today I am glad and happy and excited to chat with Hattie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So what's on?
I don't know. For some reason, people keep pushing new things out, changing the business model, changing the technology, changing org structures, trading out your colleagues in and out, and the world is just crazy and changing every day. So organizations seem to be struggling with that a lot of times, right? They don't know what's going on. Somebody said, "Didn't you realize that we're doing this new thing, that new database solution system? Didn't you log into that?" I said, "I don't know. I'm overloaded. You sent me a whole bunch of emails this morning. My manager's different. The org structure different. The company just got bought. The company just got sold. And then we got a new SAP system and a new HR system. And I don't know what's going on." So Hattie, I know you deal with this a lot on a day-to-day basis around all these changes. So it's one thing for individuals to have to handle all these changes in the world, but let's talk about just at the top of the hour here, like from an organizational standpoint, let's step back and think about how do we deal with change?
That's a great segue. And I love the way you described everything, because you know what they say, the struggle is real. And not just for organizations, as you say, and not just around technology, but it also involves people. And as folks are building up or creating their strategies around all of these things, believe it or not, people are not always at the top of the list. They're just buying all this technology. They know they need to get it implemented, whether it's around, oh gosh, we need to make sure that we're meeting these standards. Oh, we're going to be audited. Oh, this is a great new shiny tool that we know people are going to love to use. It's going to make everything easy. It's so convenient. And everybody's just going to be shaking their hands and go, oh my God, we just love you guys. Not. And organizations always seem, I believe they have the best intentions at heart. They really do in planning, because they want the best for their organizations. They also want the best for their people. However, where we come in and where I come in and where my experience comes in is that we work with them to get on the same page. Because a lot of times you'll have organizations or who may think about we're planning this, but what is the real vision? They're not taking a holistic view. And whatever that vision may be, they want to be really intentional and thoughtful about making sure that everyone understands what that vision is. Not just what it is, but why it's important for them to approach it a certain way, why they want to do it this way, and it's about not just improving your security posture as a company, as an organization, but it's also about keeping your workforce safe and secure. And that takes not only thought, it takes empathy, critical thinking, all of those things in mind. And so anyone, it doesn't matter what your title is, if you're thinking about that, you're thinking about who's involved, who do we need to tell this to, why they need to know this, and what they need to do to support this vision, our goals, and our objectives, so that makes the change seamless. It's not disruptive. You're successful in making sure that folks not only are buying in and supporting, but they're doing what you want them to do on a regular basis. Change is not just about tools. It's also about behavior. It's also a behavior thing.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. We talk about thought leadership. We talk about change in a certain way. Change is a process for moving from your current state to your future state and all those things in between. And the things in between sometimes fall off, and we get to come in and we work with them to kind of fill in those gaps, help them think about things they're not going to normally think about, help them make sure everyone's on the same page, singing the same song and the same tune. And we're dancing together off the stage left. So once everything closes out, it's successful and it's working well. And if it's not, and you have folks, anytime you're making any type of change, no matter what it is, whether it's your IT tool, whether it's about governance and understanding who's responsible for those things. Because as you think about organizational change managed from all of those things that are incorporated, you also want to make sure that you have the right people at the table. You're talking about it. Not only what's your budget, but everybody's okay with, I'm okay with what you're going to be doing. I kind of get what you're doing, but can you clarify? Everyone's part of that conversation. And you're fostering, and it's that transparency. You're being transparency about things, and everything's not going to work well. And when things aren't working well, you're telling them why.
That's huge.
That's not working well, and you're being truthful about it. Don't dance around. There's nothing worse than losing people's trust when you don't tell them the truth, or when things are not going the way that they should be.
Well, you brought up,
go ahead.
There's a couple of fantastic points here. So first of all, the whole concept of thinking about the change before you implement the change, right? So I know a lot of companies we're going to have some project management. We got the procurement. Here's the implementation team. We're going to throw like a 10-minute video out, blah, rah, 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 emailed out, and then let folks go. And that's it. So in some companies, that's all they get, right? So it's like surprise to the end user to find out, okay, not only does the system look different in interacting with it, but the roles of the people and some of the groups and the teams have changed. It doesn't really make sense. So you're trying to figure out what that is. And then you end up with the old classic water cooler, like, who the heck thought of this? And you're trying to figure out, well, there's an email alias at the bottom of the email saying, if you have any questions, go email them. And you're right? If you don't think about this, people are left in the dark about one, we didn't know it was coming. We're not exactly sure what that vision that you talked about was, because it was kind of communicated, but maybe the person who did the vision didn't do the actual communications out to the group. So then it becomes very fragmented. And the next thing you know, like you said, if people don't take responsibility, if it doesn't work well, then it's like frustration. It's like, oh my God, why can't we get better? So I'm thinking that the work that you do is almost like I want to call it a new profession, right? So you mentioned—
No, not at all.
Right.
Believe it or not, change management is in everything that we do. But what our practice is all about, and all the things, it's a discipline. Organizational change management is a discipline, in addition to a series of activities. ProSci, which is a research company where you can get a certification in organizational change management, because the way, the process that I like to say we use is called ADKAR. It's an ADKAR model, not a methodology. It's a model. So when you're working in IT and you're implementing, whether it's a new process for how people, MFA, multi-factor authenticate, they're going to sign in to your network and things such as that. You're going to think about, okay, we're going to roll out this new change to people, and you're going to want to say, hey guys, we're doing this. But one of the things I see most in most communications is that you don't explain why you're doing it that way. And why, in other words, you're not motivating that, because change is individual. People have their individual motivations as to why they want to take action onto what you want them to do. So when you're explaining the why, which is, is it going to be more convenient for me? Less time for me to sign in? Do I have to keep signing in and MFAing all the time? So many times, because there are organizations where you have to do it about 50,000 times. Well, I don't say I'm exaggerating, but more times than you want. So what are you doing? You're minimizing that time for having to multi-factor. You're also making it convenient for them to access the information that people need. You're helping them, are you helping them to be more productive in their jobs, and doing their work because they're not losing time with other things? And if they do or not able to do that, and they do need to contact the IT support, that turnaround that you can help them to solve that problem. It's all about solving a problem, not just making a change,
Yeah.
but you're solving a problem that is going to either enhance that individual's capabilities, and improve your organization productivity, their security, because we all know security is a big thing with all the things that are going around. IT and security have some of the hardest jobs.
Yes.
So communication, thought, planning, good strategy, and integrating those principles of organization, the people process side, along with that early in, can help increase or improve that you're going to be able to achieve those goals and those objectives effectively and much better than without. We have that research shows when you, ProSci has done research for over 25 years, well, 25 years this year, that shows that when you integrate organizational change management early, you have the odds of it being successful are 7 times greater. And that's research of being successful.
Well,
So,
what's interesting is I had actually a couple of years ago, I never heard of OCM. Somebody mentioned it, one of my colleagues. I said, that's interesting. I said, oh crap, another acronym. I said, oh, never heard of that before. And I've heard of change management in general, project manager, people keep things on track, but never OCM. So I'm not sure, even for some of my audience members, right, that they know, they hear OCM, they're going to understand what it is and the value that it brings. Because if it's embedded inside of an organization, there's no official title.
right.
And it might work, but they don't know it's there. So I think it's helpful for them to understand the power of what OCM is doing, especially if they're thinking, man, this new system came out, it was choppy. Well, maybe it's choppy because the thinking about the change wasn't structured. Maybe there's some capability out there. Maybe there's professionals like you out there who are helping organizations with this. So let's talk OCM as a practice and the value it brings to IT.
As I said earlier, a little bit, earlier, it's a discipline. Or organizational change management is a series of activities that allows organizations to move from their current process or whatever the problem that is. Whether you're implementing a new system, you're implementing new processes, you're implementing new technology, or you're actually establishing a group of folks to work together more collaboratively and thoughtfully in how to implement a variety of different things, from IT, security, applications, no matter what. Organizational change management is integrated. That's a series of activities and processes that help them improve. Based on what I was saying before, more organizations are using and integrating ORCM versus more than not. But also I like to take opportunities to educate folks. So I talk to a lot of different groups and help them understand, or talk to them of why they want to utilize organizational change management when they're talking to different people. If you have a client, or if you are working in an organization where you need your end users to adopt to different changes, we help them understand in terms of these activities. We come in with you, we interview the folks your stakeholders. That's part of that process to understand, what have been some of your pain points previously that haven't, enabled you to understand how to use a technology? What are some of the challenges? We ask those different questions. And that's part of that stakeholder interview process. We do a stakeholder assessment. Those are some of the activities as part of organizational change management. It's those activities that involve people.
And I know end users love that. Yeah.
So organizations who care about their people and want them to be able to do the things or take action on things or understand or be educated, they work with us to develop the strategic plans that enable them to do that, because they're not thinking about that. And most technologists, engineers, architects, they're not always thinking about the people process. They're just building, as I said before. They're creating the technology. They're designing. And we keep them honest in terms of, okay, what type of user experience do you want your people to have? And you want them to have a positive experience. What are those things as part of that technology integration or that process improvement that you're doing can help them do better? Are you reducing, how are you going to reduce the need for them to have to, where you had them do this much more? How are you integrating that into your process? How are you notifying or informing them or even keeping them informed on a regular basis? Because communication is always key. It's big. It's really about listening. Communication, if you listen well, because you're communicating to understand, not respond to. That's another piece in organization. Any type of communication to be real. Integrating organizational change management into projects, we create what's called a stakeholder management plan. That's integrated early, where you interview everybody that's part of that project to make sure even the project folks are communicating seamlessly and talking to one another on a regular basis instead of working in silos and doing their own thing. So that creates problems. So that's something that your IT folks will want to think about as they're doing from a big picture standpoint. And those leaders that are ideal leaders who are actually sponsoring the various activities, they're the ones, the decision makers. We start with them first. We make sure that they're on the same page. We make sure that they're communicating. We're fostering that communication and transparency among them, even on a regular basis. I don't talk about it because I'm a non-technical person. I'm probably one of the better people to bring those technology people together, because I'm not thinking just about that piece of technology. I'm not thinking about that particular policy or process only. I'm thinking about who is it going to affect? Who is it going to impact? I'm thinking about those blockers. And as we use our OCM folks in a program management basis, OCM is really important for a project manager, because you're thinking about more than just scheduling. You're thinking about more than just the budget. You're also thinking about everybody that's involved. You're thinking about two steps ahead about who should be involved. You're also that person who comes in and says, hey, guys, shouldn't we be talking about this, or shouldn't you? Helping them fill gaps. I've had clients that have given us feedback in terms of they were glad we were involved, because they say, you helped us think about things we didn't normally think about.
That's
that were
huge.
Beyond. Things that we didn't incorporate, and we should have socialized here, or we should have talked to these people here in order for it to go better. So I don't want to overstate the importance of organizational change management as much as I want to help you understand how it can be critical, how it can help you be successful, and how it can make a very serious impact. Because it's also about conversation. Because you're bringing people together who don't normally talk to one another. You don't know who owns anything. You don't know who should own. You don't know who needs to be informed. You don't know who needs to be consulted. They don't always think about that. So we help fill those gaps as well.
Those are crucial. A lot of crucial points there, because it's like, if the company's going to take the initiative to spend the money, have people roll out all this technology, maybe change the way teams work, you would think people want to track it, communicate it, bring everybody on board. And it sounds obvious, right? But a lot of organizations struggle without it. So that's why I think it is kind of critical to talk about OCM, what this discipline helps to do, because maybe people don't know, like, I know something's off, but I'm not exactly sure. Maybe, hey, you heard the classic, right? IT went and the security team got together and they put MFA in and they said something's wrong here. And it's in a hospital and they say these are doctors and nurses. So the MFA may not work. The long password complexity requirements may not work. Why using sticky notes is patient care, right? Understanding who's using the system and what's actually valid, right? So from a technical standpoint, they're like, hey, we checked the box. We gave you MFA. I don't know why people are doing it this way. Or I told them just to hover over the email and they should figure this out and then click this button and click that button. And all of a sudden it's like, they didn't hear what the end user was saying. They didn't hear the frustrations. And some organizations don't know how to capture that, right? So you may have
you just talked upon something that's super important too. It's about a feedback loop. Yeah. We also work with folks as they're testing because I am a big advocate for pilots. Yeah. Getting a small group of end users, not just the technology people, not just the IT and security groups, but the people who we're going to be asking to use the tools. Pull a small group of those folks in, pilot it with them, get their feedback on their experience, find out also what their pain points are. Then you can adjust, especially if you're going to be rolling out to a larger group. Yeah. Those are some of the things that we incorporate and always encourage folks to do. Or if you don't have a large group of folks and it's a very, very, very small group you're rolling out to, still capture feedback during your testing. What are some of the things that you saw that are common things that went wrong? What are some of the things that, that really stood out for you? Capture that, document that information and make adjustments. It's not a perfect process and it shouldn't be. But if you do, if you're a really smart organization, whatever you roll out, even after you do a full rollout, give feedback and be prepared to get not just, you want that transparency because you want it to work well. But a lot of organizations don't get feedback because they don't want to know or they think they don't have time. I say make the time. I don't care if you get it for 50. Get it, and you don't have to do a lot of questions. A lot of the feedback that we execute and deliver, it has no more than 3 questions and an open box to get comments. Open-ended, and one that includes an open-ended comment box to get, their comments as to what they say. But
that's
just
so powerful,
something you
right?
do.
Yeah. Because that's a simple thing, right? People think that's simple, but it's like, well, we're waiting for a new system to be implemented. We can capture right now. Open the Word document. If you're talking to these people, capture it, right? That importance of capturing is say that 3 months after we deploy something to fix problem 1, frustration 4, and challenge 6, let's see how we did. So I'm still shocked that organizations don't capture it, track it. And then if you know what, we can only get to 3 of these problems here, and then next year we get to the others. Some companies struggle to communicate that to the end user. So they know, man, I'm glad you guys did this 6 months. We saw these improvements. They matched what we said. You guys came in, you implemented. We know problems 5, 6, and 3 or 8. We're going to come back to next quarter or next year. And the end user say, okay, I'm understanding what the process is. But I'm kind of shocked still that organizations don't track it like that. So all they said is the system went in, but didn't fix my problem. Well, there's multiple phases.
There's this thing that people don't like to hear bad news or any negative news.
It's not bad news either, right?
And the thing is, when it's a huge rollout, it's always smart to do your feedback fresh once it's rolled out. Give it a week, find out that user experience. Go back 60 to 90 days. Hey, find out what's going on. That's another reinforcement to help reinforce and make any adjustments to see how it's going. And then if it's still new, say, even if I like even to find out a year, how's it going?
Yeah.
And it can improve, but it's actually helpful to get that type of data and those type of metrics, because what it helps to do is justify your budgeting for next year.
That's huge.
Priorities for that following year. and also helps to determine what approach you're going to take to help you be even more successful, or to continue that success. I can't emphasize that enough. And then communicate with people you can do informal. You can even just, feedback is informal. You could just go talk to people. Data's good. We like data, but sometimes you can do an informal, conversation where you pull people together, say 20 folks. I've worked with organizations where you've had the senior leaders. They will have what's called, quick little fireside chats with people just to get feedback on how things are going. As far as how is this process working for you? What would you do to make it better? Because there's always somebody out there that can help you that's not so close to the particular project. But you may hear something that, I didn't think about that. And then you could actually use that.
Yeah.
Just because a person is not a technology person or an IT person or a security person, they can't share input or feedback that is not going to be useful.
Yeah. Can you think about it? If you say simple as, supposedly the business said we're getting the return on investment. The only way to know if the investment was returned to where you thought it was, you have to get the feedback and ask the question. So they said, hey, in the beginning of the year, we're going to spend $1 million and it's going to make this thing faster. So you think it'd be a simple question later in the year. So is that thing faster? They said, no. Ooh. But you talk to somebody else. No. And then as you say, collect data. It could be of the 100 people you ask, maybe only 10% said no, but 90% said yes.
And that's powerful.
Right.
You're getting that. You're getting that. Yep.
So qualitative and quantitative collection of data, because they said it was important to investors' money. So let's make sure we're not, half-assing getting feedback. And say, yeah, I heard from a couple people and they said everything is going great. It's like, who did you talk to? And do you have a structural way to go out and get that feedback? So you only went to the 2 of the 5 stakeholders and only 40 other end users. What about everybody else? You didn't solicit it. There was no structure around how you plan to actually get that feedback to say, every dollar we spend in business, we're going to check to see if it's returning what it is. So I'm loving what you're saying there, Hattie, because it's like we can provide much more structure around this. We don't have to guess at it. If we think it's going to make it faster or slower or reduce your workload, that's one of my favorites, right? It's going to reduce some of your stress because we're going to automate some of these tasks. So go back 3 months later is, so how you doing today? I'm doing more work than I was. Oh, stop, hold it, pause. Let's dive into that.
Exactly. That's the whole purpose. Organizations apparently purchase technology or do their processes. It's all about making things easier.
Yeah.
So people can
free up their time. They won't be as busy.
It's not just about time, but contribute to a company's bottom line. And we all know companies are about what? Financial gain.
Yes.
Okay. In order to have that financial gain, you want to make sure you have the best processes or effective processes in place.
Yeah.
You say you hire the best people. Cool. So you are not only investing in good technology, you're investing in your people when you do invest in the tools and resources that are going to enable them. And then you're bringing creative people on to identify what are the best tools that are going to help us do this well. Because like you say, every company wants to get a good return on their investment, right? So it's not just investing in tools and resources. You're investing in your people. I'm not just talking about development. I'm talking about providing them with those things. We're talking about IT here. IT is not just a bunch of processes. You have people who are integrating and planning and strategizing around what those processes are going to be and what their technology is going to be. So everything is included in that financial investment because it plays a part.
Huge,
Bottom line, everybody's about their green, right?
Yes.
In order to get that green, you got to do all of those. You're going to want to do all of those things. This is the way the world works right now.
Right. Because theoretically, not theoretically, but practically, if the project fails and you should have just canceled it and started over or redirect the efforts, but you don't do it, and leadership's not in place, the culture's not in place, the process not in place, and you go another 6 months wasting your time and effort down the wrong path, and then they just take those people out, bring some new people in, and they start over, repackage it, but don't really fix the underlying issues.
Versus doing good planning in the beginning to avoid failure. Yeah, I have nothing. Yeah, sometimes things are going to fail. But if you didn't do your due diligence and you don't do your homework in the beginning or early stages, you can expect to have some issues. You can expect to find out that things are going to fall by the wayside or things aren't going to work the way you want. But if you've done everything that you needed to do in the early stages, and I'm talking about the very beginning, which is bring the right people to the table, understand what you're going to do, why you're doing what you're going to do, and then develop, this is the approach of how we're going to do it. And these are the folks we need to help us get it done. And these are the things and activities we know are going to help us get it done early in. And like I said, it's not going to be a perfect process. You may have to pivot, be flexible. Structure's great, but you also want to be flexible in your structure because you pivot and things are going to change throughout, but understand that and know. So, because if you really think about all the things that we do, whether it's an implementation or whether it's some sort of deployment or what have you, you got to work quickly, but you also need to work thoughtfully.
And you don't have to do it by yourself, right? Because some people may feel the way they work, like, well, I need to leave this meeting. I heard these issues. Go talk to some other people who wasn't in your meeting. They come up back to the group and say, I thought of something new. It's like, what? You lost the context there. So if you're getting feedback outside the group, don't include the people who are in the group. Now you did something else. And it's like, okay, let's make sure that if we got 10 people in the room here hashing this out, dynamically thinking on their feet, thinking logically, it's like, you know what? This doesn't make sense, right? Let's make a change here. And maybe some people in the room don't feel comfortable expressing that, but then they're getting feedback and other inputs later that you can't see. He said, why is he saying that all of a sudden? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Maybe you should have brought that other 2 or 3 people that you were talking with into the group as well. So let's get it all out so we can really hear all these points of view.
That's interesting that you say that. It's not about bringing a bunch of people in to get their points of view. It's about bringing the right people in. And the main thing is when you leave the room, that you're in alignment on what's going to be done. Even if you have a siloed conversation, because it's important that when we are working with folks and we're facilitating, we're going to remind them and reinforce, this is what we were aligned on. Why are you thinking this versus this? Because we get that a lot as well. You go out and have a conversation with someone else in a siloed view, come back and say, hey, we need to do this. It's not about bringing that person into the room to give input. It's to understand, why did you change the way you're thinking within this group after we agreed upon this? And sometimes it's legitimate.
We need that until we found out later the person they went to talk to didn't have the full context because they weren't in the room.
Well, not only that, they did not give that person the full context, or nor did they tell that individual, hey, this is what we agreed upon here, and this is why we agreed. So that person also needs to be accountable for whoever they talk to, and they do understand the full context. Instead of coming back to the room with something different, help that person that they talk to understand what the full context is. And even if that person still doesn't agree with it, at least they know why the bigger group was aligned on it. And that person is not going to come back to the room with a change. They may share that information that we're going to change it, but they're going to say, this was shared with me. What do you guys think about this?
Yes.
It's all in how the conversation is steered.
Right. Now we're talking about decision-making, transparency, and accountability, right? So all the new inputs you're going to come, let them know, because the advice you're getting from somebody on the side is like, oh, dude, you only told me 3 of the 5 facts I needed to know. You told me about fact 4 and 5.
Let's be clear about this. There are some people who only should be on a need to know basis, because you can have why do you have 30 people in the design session?
Yeah.
Only 10 of them are actively contributing. The rest are shadowing to listen.
Yes.
Okay. But then you're going to have 30 people, and then those people who are listening and heard everything throw a wrench in it.
Oh, yeah. For some reason, yeah.
Yeah, and then we have to start over when they were already in the room and understood. That's why sometimes you don't need 30 people in the room. You need 10 to 12 of the right people who are not, and it throws things off track.
Yes, it does.
Especially if it doesn't make the process better.
Right. And you don't know what happened behind the scenes. Like, what the heck? We were jamming here.
No, that person is in the room.
Oh, so even in the road.
Daddy, there you go. People, it's called listen to understand.
He said, I thought this thing was going to get us back on track with our numbers. What were you hearing? Because we got this new initiative going on.
Also, you got the same notes as everybody else. Yeah. That conversation should have been an off, a one-off conversation with your boss or whoever else that was in the room too, or with your team to say, hey guys, I thought I heard this, and this. But the main thing is, even with those 30 people in the room, we as OCM or program managers, we make sure we keep people on track. Hey guys, thank you for that piece of information. I know we discussed this as a group and everyone was here and this is what we agreed to. Let's not move off, for lack of better words, on a tangent or on a different conversation and stay focused on this. And maybe we park this and figure out, is this, something that we need to consider versus, stay on this discussion. Are you good with that?
Well, that's showing discipline. That's showing leadership. And even something as simple as let's visualize and make sure our assumptions are documented in front of all these 30 people, right? Because some people taking side notes as opposed to, it's on the screen. It's going to be a 5% increase and it's 150,000 on these dates on this timeline and hit a critical paths. And we're looking at the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people don't put them on the whiteboard or document so you can't see it. So everybody, one person thinking 3%, some thinking 4%. I think this guy said now they'll just click a button and this thing will work. It's like, whoa, no. I need your assumption in your mind to show.
And that speaks to that transparency where everybody has the information, even if they didn't interpret it the same way.
Yes.
It's up to the facilitator, which may be an OCM person who is facilitating the meeting, to bring that person back to shore. If you did not get that information, we're going to make sure you get it. And if it hasn't been access to you and that your team is explaining to that clearly, does that make sense? And then that person will be like, oh, okay. Thank you. And we'll move on. But let's park that. Make sure you get that information. But this is what was discussed. This is why we're approaching it this way. It's called reinforcing and reiterate. So everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time. So you avoid that one-off conversation again, because also too, those folks maybe just want to do it their way. They may be a resistor, but at least if you continue to keep that conversation where everyone is still hearing the same thing.
Yes.
This is what was agreed to. And let us talk about this at every time because we want to make sure everybody's still on the same page, but that keeps the focus where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Those are the things that we do as practitioners as well.
And I love that. Even when you get outside the room, right? So the 30 people are locked in and you want to make sure you document those externalities because so maybe legal isn't in the room, governance isn't in the room, the person doing the hiring in the room. So you want to make sure once you take this outside your room and share with other teams, you identify legal, here are the questions and the assumptions. You don't want later the legal say, we can't do that. Or somebody said, we can't transfer that data overseas. There's a regulatory body that says we can't do that. Or the cloud guy say, we can't automate that. That's not going to work. So we want to make sure.
And it depends on the situation. I'm speaking from a project discovery architecture standpoint, legal's not going to be in the room in the first place.
Well, if you find out later that legal said this is the way you guys architectured it, I love the way you did it, but from labor reasons or other things, we can't share the data.
Yeah, and that depends on the situation.
Yeah,
that depends on each project has its own unique characteristics. It has its own unique things. So I'm speaking from a general sense. And I love that when you talked about legal, there may be some things that have legal. Hopefully that your project team understands what your policies are from that standpoint, and they're not speaking to those. And what's really good about some organizations, they're great about sharing their policies of what you can say and what you shouldn't say, what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And to ensure on a regular basis that people are adhering to that. So
but we stand legal.
It may not be
governed.
So for the most part, we don't have those. We're not going to have those issues. And in my professional career, I haven't had that problem where legals had to come in, because most companies or organizations that I've worked with that it's already enforced, and it's very regularly reinforced so that people understand. And if they go off of there, they do know they have to go to legal, but they also know how to communicate that or articulate that to whoever may have asked that question. So it doesn't even need to get that far.
Or just make sure the output of what you guys just decided, there's an established policy and process that's going to be checked off to make sure we don't get to the point where somebody says, you guys, I love everything you guys just did, but we are contractually obligated to a third party. And that thing doesn't expire for another 2 years. So that whole new thing you guys wanted to do in this big initiative, there's this critical dependency. We want to make sure you document.
Just say we were not able to do that.
Right. And then let's repivot and let's do something else.
That's another thing too. I tell people, some people need media training, because the less you say, the less mud you step in and the less holes you dig yourself. Because some people, when they communicate, they talk a lot and they talk too much. And they be succinct, be concise, be clear, move on.
You mean we're going to investigate the problem customer X had? We're going to get back to you.
Well, if the customer's in the room, you're not going to say that either.
Right. Or as opposed to saying, no problem, we're going to fix it. Like, no, we're going to get back to you because we need to double check on our side before you just go it.
Our team is going to look into it. Thank you for sharing. We'll look into it and follow up with you in a timely fashion.
And those words matter. For instance, you don't want that.
Less words matter.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, ooh, boy, they'll do.
I think the engineer just went,
stop.
I know.
I'm like one of those, stop talking.
I think the engineer just used the breach word. Well, we don't use the breach word. You're not authorized to say incident.
I will get in the chat real quick. Please stop talking.
Yeah. Oh, or our team didn't see that. What? You can't be saying that. Whoa. And that goes back to how do we handle what we're doing to the external audience and disagree on it as a team, right? You're talking in
mixed company, again, I'm going to move on from this, but it's important. Communication is more about listening to understand rather than to respond. And that's my mantra right there.
Right. And then when you got that, listen and say, you know what, we're going to tackle this. Let's make sure what you're tackling, you accurately describe what the effect this initiative is going to have. Don't oversell it. Don't undersell it. Be transparent if you're behind schedule. If you need to be pivot, that's fine as well, right? Just be transparent about it. Have leadership accountable for what's going on. And we're going to be all right then. At that point, we're going to be all right. And it's actually one team. So I think that's
because you're working collaboratively.
Yes.
I call it collaborative leadership. I don't care what level you're on. I don't care if you're an app owner. I don't care if you're HR. I don't care if you're the IT, whatever. Collaborative leadership means you're working together and you're on the same page and you're working collectively to a single goal.
I love that.
based on that
Hey,
vision.
that could be like a drop mic moment right there, Hattie.
Drop.
Oh, I love it. This has been fun. We're like scratching the surface. We can go for hours, but at some point I say, I got to transition off. This has been fun. I got some notes I'm going to take here for some things we can do in the future. I mean, very insightful. I loved the areas that we covered. It's fun hanging out with you, Hattie.
I had a great time. Thank you for the invitation. It is always fun talking to you, William, whether it's here or anywhere else. I always learn something. You're a really great guy. And I really enjoy these types of conversations because, they're I just like to say they're not formal, structured, strict conversation, because you're just having a conversation. It's really all it is.
We are. And I think next time my producer might be joining us for a show. I don't know.
She's gonna need to. We need to hook up. I'm telling y'all, we can do some things.
I know. And I think she's about to come off of a mutant camera, but you're not going to see her. But we're going to get her on the show in the future. But awesome. For now, yes. So for now, we're going to wrap up another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Until then, take care. Thanks for joining another episode of the Smart IT Podcast, where we explore what's next for IT and disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk together. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. And for more Smart IT wisdom, check out my website at williamreed.info.